This is typically what you'd see at a snowcross race. Thousands of fans, hundreds of racers, and tons of snow. But at the site of the Duluth National Snowcross, it looks more like summer than winter.
If I was a betting person, I'd say that I'm going to need my parka by Thanksgiving more than my swimsuit.
Race organizer Terry Matson says he's not worried about the warm temperatures. With the race just a few weeks away, he remains optimistic that everything will go on as planned.
That's not going to affect the racing much. It's not going to affect the spectating, but it's just going to make it that much harder to race a snowmobile at Duluth National without the extra seat time leading up to the event.
Duluth National is the first race on the snowcross circuit. Racers dazzle the crowds with amazing speeds, jumps, and turns. A talent that takes months of practice riding and track testing of machines and equipment. And none of that can happen until the snow falls.
Well, if anything, the warm weather is certainly going to limit the amount of test time that they have, and that's the downside for the teams and for the racers.
Last year, racers were cut short after rain and fog forced the cancellation of the last day of racing.
We really can't have any control over that, so we don't worry about it too much. We've studied a lot of weather data leading up to Thanksgiving, and it's always been very favorable for snow making, so we're very confident that we will have snow.
And if there still isn't any snow come race day, well, Terry has another plan in mind.
If not, and the temperatures are balmy, well, we'll shift gears and shoot for the world's largest margarita party, I guess.
In Duluth, Jody Grayson, News 6.
Overhead was an almost impenetrable umbrella of 3,000 planes. Those few Nazi
My first flight as in combat happened to be on D-Day.
Ken Dahlberg talks about the day the Allies invaded Normandy as if it were yesterday. But he was only 24 years old when he put his life on the line and entered the war as a fighter pilot.
You'll never see a wounded fighter pilot. They're either real alive or real dead. Because, you know, they're like a bullet. They're just sitting in a bunch of gasoline and armaments.
Fighter pilots were special, but Dahlberg was extraordinary. A Top Gun who flew 102 missions, shot down 15 enemy aircraft, and survived being shot down himself 3 times.
My windshield was full of oil and I smoke in the cockpit. I knew I had to get out. So I just ducked in the cloud and bailed out. And I landed at a very nice estate. And they spoke English and they were very affluent FFE underground people. They hid me.
And then how long until you were shot down again?
The Battle of the Bulge. An American tank saw me go down and they came in and fetched me out that time. And the 3rd time
Was not a charm.
They hit me from apparently behind my armor plating, because when my wingman and all the other ones said I was killed in action because I had a direct hit, and I have miraculously been just blown out of the airplane. I free fell about 9,500 feet, unconscious, and just regained consciousness in time to pull a parachute and just barely open for a hard landing. So that was pretty close. That's the closest I came.
The next closest call was being captured by the Germans, but Dahlberg tried to escape, first by swimming up a stream in the February cold, the second time by ambushing his guard and stealing a German Red Cross vehicle.
They did say I had killed that guard because I hit him with the butt of a gun. Somebody roughed me up, and I got 4 teeth loosened up, which I lost as a result of it. But that's all I lost in the whole war was 4 teeth.
Yeah, we're gonna go golfing. This is just an excuse to fly.
Now Dahlberg flies his own plane, but the swagger and sparkle of that young fighter pilot are there when he takes the controls.
Now you've been back to Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Did it bring back a flood of memories?
Yeah.
How could any World War II vet go to that cemetery and look out over all those crosses and not get emotional?
Yeah, there's a lot of crosses there. I don't have a cross there. Maybe I have.
All the sources of dietary information these days can be overwhelming. Now 5 heavyweights are backing one set of guidelines for healthful eating, which should make things somewhat easier.
People have so much misinformation. It's just a matter of looking at your plate and saying, okay, do I have all the food groups in this meal? And are they the right size?
The American Cancer Society, the American Dietetic Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, National Institute of Health, and the American Heart Association all agree we should limit fat and salt intake and base our diet on the food pyramid. Eat more grains than anything else, followed by fruits and vegetables, then meat, then dairy. Moderation is another key.
An easy way to calculate how much you should be eating is to use your fist. That's about half a cup of pasta, which is 1 serving size. You can eat 2 serving sizes. You just have to make sure you count it as 2 servings.
The area is facing an unusually high threat after straight-line winds downed millions of trees during the July 4th storms, creating a tinderbox of dry trees and brush, just waiting to burn.
You're going to be looking at fires that are very difficult to suppress and contain.
The U.S. Forest Service held a seminar at the deck to put out a warning, but experts are also looking at ways to contain and prevent such a fire.
You know, how do we provide for a safety situation for the public as well as for firefighters?
Outside the BWCA, they're considering commercial harvesting of the downed timber. But inside the boundary waters, they might fight fire with fire.
Within the wilderness, basically the tool we have available to us would be prescribed fire, where we would actually start a fire under very controlled conditions to try to break up the continuous block of downed trees and slow the rate of spread of a fire.
Mark Van Avery, stationed with the Forest Service in Ely, says cabin and resort owners should be aware of the increased risk.
And the best thing they can do is try to reduce the amount of available vegetation near their structures. They need to clear away brush and debris, don't stack firewood against the cabin.
Half of the forest fires in the area are caused by human carelessness. Experts want canoe campers to take extra precautions around fire.
I'm sure that there will be circumstances, particularly within the blowdown areas, where we will be requiring people to use stoves only and have no open fires.
But if a lightning strike or a careless camper does start a blaze, foresters say they will be ready with evacuation plans, more equipment and emergency crews, and better communication. Kim Kaiser, News 6.
Regular exercise was never part of his routine, and last Christmas Eve, 51-year-old Joseph Terzi fought a losing battle with his snowblower. For an hour, he wrestled with his new machine to clear snow. He didn't feel well when he finished. By the time he got inside, he knew something was seriously wrong.
I had enormous pain, chest pains, like a Mack truck had parked itself on my chest. I could breathe, but there was enormous pressure, just crushing pressure.
Like this man, Joe was admitted to the hospital for an angioplasty, but the blockage causing the heart attack was too great, and he had to have coronary artery bypass surgery. Joe was one of more than 600 people with heart attacks who took part in a new study. It found 10% of these patients had their heart attacks within an hour of vigorous exertion, mainly running or jogging and heavy pushing and lifting. More than 80% of those suffering exertion-related heart attacks rarely engaged in any kind of regular, moderate, or strenuous physical activity.
People who are very low active, who had never engaged in any sort of strenuous level of activity, were almost 30 times more likely to have an exertion-related heart attack versus people who were highly active, who had almost negligible risk of having an exertion-related heart attack. So we're talking about a considerable amount of risk.
As reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Dr. Geary and his colleagues found that along with being sedentary, those more likely to experience an exertion-related heart attack were men, smokers, those with high cholesterol levels, and people who are overweight.
If we don't smoke, if we treat our cholesterol, and we keep our body weight under check, and also if we engage in regular physical activity, like going for a walk or even slow jogging, some amount of recreational activity, which will be done every day or most of the days of the week, it's actually going to protect you against having an exertion-related heart attack.
Joe Terzi is doing everything he can to prevent another heart attack. He's exercising regularly. He stopped smoking, lowered his very high cholesterol level, and is eating healthfully. And he's learned an important but painful lesson.
If I had to go back and do it again, I'll hire somebody to come and plow my driveway.
Pretty overwhelmed, just being in the presence of what I call my heroes and people I admire.
Hundreds of veterans, friends, and family listened with pride as stories of history were told.
I've been toying with whether I should start off with an apology, and I think I must, because there's no way that I can touch every person's story that amounts to why we're coming here today.
They were there not only to remember the past, but honor those who fought for our freedom.
Every veteran and those who waited and worked and worried on the home front has a story to tell. Veterans Memorial Hall is the place to tell that story.
Stories of war, peace, friendship, and tragedy will forever be preserved at the Veterans Memorial Hall.
As a veteran and an elected official, it is an honor to dedicate a space for development of an exhibit that remembers and thanks those who served and those who are serving.
Pretty overwhelmed, just being in the presence of what I call my heroes and people I admire.
Hundreds of veterans, friends, and family listened with pride as stories of history were told.
I've been toying with whether I should start off with an apology, and I think I must, because there's no way that I can touch every person's story that amounts to why we're coming here today.
They were there not only to remember the past, but honor those who fought for our freedom.
Every veteran and those who waited and worked and worried on the home front has a story to tell. Veterans Memorial Hall is the place to tell that story.
Stories of war, peace, friendship, and tragedy will forever be preserved at the Veterans Memorial Hall.
As a veteran and an elected official, it is an honor to dedicate a space for development of an exhibit that remembers and thanks those who served and those who are serving.
The celebration was one way to remember veterans for the day. The Veterans Memorial Hall is one way to remember them forever. In Duluth, Jody Grayson, News 6.
The medals actually came to Mike Calaleo through the National Medal of Honor Society. They want them on display so that people learn that these medals are out there, that everybody who walks around saying they're a Medal of Honor recipient may not necessarily be one, and they say there are quite a few. He told me that it makes him kind of mad that there are fake Medals of Honor that have been made and sold to people. This medal is not something that is for sale. It requires that a person have show some kind of heroism, usually in combat situations, and to have people walking around who have fake medals is a little hard for him to take. The Veterans Memorial Hall Committee is in the process of doing some painting, laying carpeting, getting some final cosmetic touches put on the room that the Veterans Memorial Hall exhibit is housed in, and they're getting the new computers to put in that will house the videotaped and audio histories from the veterans, so that people could come in and actually pull up videotaped presentations of veteran stories. They're still getting artifacts in, and they're still looking for individuals from this area and from northern Minnesota to write down their experiences of wars and send them to the Veterans Memorial Hall so they can enter them into these computers and people can pull them up and read more about what it was really like being there.
An hour for £4, so I mean 1 day for £4. So if I get a 20-pounder, that's 5 days, and that's about 5 days until Thanksgiving.
And all of them are hoping to find the right turkey at the right price. But local food stores have been planning even further ahead to make sure they have enough birds to meet the demand.
Now, if you think there are a lot of turkeys out front, just take a look at these pallets of turkeys, about 2,500, all ordered back in August.
All these turkeys are stockpiled for good reason. This manager remembers a year when they were in short supply.
We sat here for 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, and we had a sea of people through this whole department just waiting for a turkey.
And while finding a turkey may not be difficult this year, the hardest part may be getting it home.
The shopping is hectic, you know, coming out on a day when everybody else is out.
In Duluth, Jana Katsuyama, News 6.
Well, the Duluth Boat Club has got a real rich, deep, proud tradition in Duluth, and now in this day and age with the kind of the boom on the boating and the water sports end of it, plus needing, I believe, and we believe here in the community that the kids need something to do in the summer too, to bring them together and to get them into a life sport that they can carry with them, and for them to actually give something back to the community too. So.
How many families do you have applied? What are all the people in the lobby waiting for? People to have a Christmas basket given.
Well, I think that the most general response is very humbling to think that there are kind people in the community that would give of themselves, whether it's an actual food donation or a monetary donation, to be able to purchase the things for the basket. So that in and of itself is very humbling to people, to know there's people out there that really do care, and someone wanting to help give them that boost they need at the holiday. But obviously it means a nice meal for somebody that otherwise wouldn't have one.
That could take a while.
comments about the issue of postponing about that, so I would know whether
referendum were to come up for vote with Mary Stafford, Mark Miles, and it is written into the law. Certainly, if the program didn't work out, the contract. And the public was told that a thorough review would be done at the end of the third year. Before that time, a review can be neither thorough nor complete, and is being pushed through based not upon Edison's performance, but rather upon the private interests of Edison and the politics of certain board members. This action is not only immoral and underhanded, it's an abuse of power.
To those opposed to the Edison schools, I don't believe it's about achievement. It's not about parents. It's not about education. It's not about the kids. It's about politics, pure and simple. To delay this is to sabotage my children's educational future for political purposes.
Right. Well, Blue Cross
positive economic impact to Two Harbors. Bringing good paying jobs with excellent benefits to this community is an enjoyable position to be in.
Dolly Francisco is manning the Salvation Army kettle outside the West Duluth Kmart, greeting customers and ringing her bell.
I wanted to do something to do, and they needed bells, so I decided to go ring bells for them.
The Salvation Army desperately needs bell ringers. There are 20 kettles around the Duluth area, and right now only 10 to 15 are manned. And with fewer kettles out, that means fewer dollars going in. Right now, the organization is 31% behind in its kettle donations. Captain John Price believes because of the weather.
A lot has to do traditionally with the weather. If it's snowing or if it's bitter cold out, then people tend to think more often of those less than fortunate.
But poverty knows no season, and the donations are needed. The Salvation Army's collections will send boxed turkey dinners like these and presents under a Christmas tree to 1,500 families.
Which is nearly 10,000 individuals, about half of which are children.
Children whose parents rely on donations. Small change into kettles adds up to more than $100,000. That's why St. John's Free Lutheran Church volunteers Harlan Nelson and his buddy Mark are needed.
I don't know, it's not a bad job.
To man the kettles and ring the bells.
A little hard on the wrist.
And make Christmas merry, one donation at a time.
Happy holiday and God bless you.
Maureen Tallarico, News 6.
excited about that, and so I won't delay any further in introducing Mr. worked very, very hard to put this together.
This will simply help the community to provide an enriched learning experience for these children, for these young people.
It will be some tutorial if they aren't performing at the level that we'd like on the state standardized tests. But then the really exciting part of it is that our community collaborators will do some experiential and exploratory classes, such as science classes, computer classes, small engine classes, and WITC is going to help us with that.
No parent wants to see their child sitting in a courtroom on trial, but that is exactly where two Superior teenagers ended up this year. But District Attorney Dan Blank, who's prosecuting these teens in connection with a murder, says his first meeting with David Williams was on a different court.
And at that time, he was a 7th or 8th grader, and he was on a team that I coached against, good athlete. I thought, oh, he'll be the star of the high school team someday. And unfortunately, through the different juvenile court prosecutions, got to know him in some different kinds of ways. And just
most of the juvenile crime occurs between the hours of 3 and 7 o'clock in the afternoon when young people are unsupervised.
So community leaders are doing something about it. Federal money will fund a new proactive program for students at risk, offering classes and tutoring for kids after school, and parents will also be involved.
And so we're looking at it as a family service model.
The program will be located here at Blaine Elementary School. Students from around Superior up to the grade 8 will be able to come here Monday through Thursday after school, and that's something that people from around the community are excited about.
I think for a large number of kids it would be helpful.
See, we don't offer a lot of after-school activities. Most of our things, our services are during the day, so this will really help.
Because I get help after school and go on field trips and stuff like that.
Activities adults in Superior hope will encourage kids to grow in positive ways.
The sooner that you make certain that they're under adult supervision in key hours, the less opportunities they have to drift into activities that aren't quite so healthy.
In Superior, Jana Katsiana, News 6.
It was pretty straightforward. He pled guilty to both charges. The parties have agreed to a joint recommendation for sentencing. The judge has the final say on that matter, and it's not contingent on any kind of behavior or cooperation or testimony or anything. You know, we went down that road and it didn't work out very well, so we're just going to try to keep this as smooth and clean as possible now.
It will be weeks before these strikers gather around the negotiation table again. Talks with ME International won't resume until January. For some, this raises another concern: what to do around the holiday table this year.
The holidays aren't like they usually are. There aren't going to be as many packages. It's not as bad for me as it is for the guys with young families.
Yeah, there's some people I know that have a hard time making ends meet.
The steelworkers in Local 1028 are getting support from their families, the community, and each other.
We're taking care of our own. You know, it's what you got to do. Pull tight in times of trouble.
But they're also getting help from members of a larger union family. For the members of Union Local 346, holiday giving has taken on a new meaning this year. They've donated 160 turkeys to fellow union members who are on strike. Almost 100% of the Teamster union members donated their holiday gifts from Fleming Foods. Turkeys, enough for all of the strikers. And the remainder will go to the Salvation Army in the strikers' name.
It's just a tough time to be off, out of work around the Christmas season. So, like I say, we felt fortunate enough to be in a position to do something for them and just show some union support.
And while it may be harder to make ends meet this holiday season, these strikers say just being with family is what will make this year's holiday memorable. In Gary, Jana Katsuyama, News 6.
Are you going to go down and come back up? We can.
Inside the Fond du Lac Community College auditorium, a driving simulator is getting a lot of attention.
We can offer and do training that cannot be done out on a regular roadway or a track. And that's been the problem in the past, is they do training out as an airport setting up traffic cones. Well, that's not really realistic because you do have to have traffic interact, you have to have weather.
Fond du Lac College offers an associate's degree in law enforcement, and the simulator could become part of the training.
They'll get a good indication, I think, after
just being, and that's for 15 minutes, whether or not it's something I can work on or something that I maybe need to change my career goals right now.
And the system also tests firefighters, ambulance drivers, even snowplow drivers.
Annually, right before the winter time, we always go through our getting ready for winter training protocol, and this might just be a nice addition to that to get people, prepared for what they're going to be going through during the rigors of winter snowplowing.
First, we tested the system on graduate Pete Olson, giving him night driving, fog, snow, and a tire blowout.
When I got the blowout, you could feel the thing jerking, and I drove over a curb, and kind of surprised me there, but pretty realistic.
Then it was my turn to chase the bad guys in this mock Crown Victoria. First, we buckle up and then turn on the lights and sirens.
Push that first red button up.
Oh, okay.
Now you are clear.
Now I can go as fast as I want. The course includes obstacles, like people. Pesky pedestrians. And the chase comes to a fiery end when we veer off the road.
You just rolled your patrol car.
I get a second chance. I spot the red BMW driving erratically, possibly drunk. I go to flip on my lights. Oops, shouldn't have looked down. The chase continues. I must have been driving for hours since now it's dark. Then, all of a sudden, the perp makes a sharp turn and...
Drove him into the wall.
Can I stop him? The simulator shakes and pulls just like a real car. But thankfully for me and other drivers, the crashes involved disappear with a click of the computer. The system cost $150,000 to buy, but designers say it's well worth the price if it saves the life of an officer through its training. In Carleton County, Maureen Tallarico, News 6.
You can drive anywhere. You can drive off onto the grass.
Michelle, the most important thing is never be afraid to ask questions of someone calling and asking you for money. Reputable organizations will always take the time to give you full, clear answers. The Minnesota Attorney General's office requires organizations soliciting charitable donations to register with that office. So if you have any doubts, you can always call and ask or check the Attorney General's website. Meanwhile, we have some tips to help you make decisions on charitable giving. Set your own budget for donations. Ask how your contribution will be used. Be aware that telephone solicitors are often paid telemarketers. A paid solicitor is required by law to name his or her employer. Know who you're giving to and watch out for sound-alike charities. And to always give by check, never send cash. And remember, legitimate charities will always take the time to answer your questions fully. Now, to check on a charity, you can call the Attorney General's office toll-free at 1-800-657-3787, or you can call 651-296-3353. You can also check whether a charitable organization is legally registered with the Attorney General's office by logging on to news6online.com. Just click on the news links. And here's another consumer tip. If you want to reduce the number of mailings and telephone solicitation calls you receive, you can contact the Direct Marketing Association at P.O. Box 9008, Farmington, New York, 11735-9008. Ask for the mail and telephone preference service. This service can help a consumer get off direct mail and telemarketing lists. Michelle?
Thanks, Margaret. You missed that address.
Yeah.
United by loss, Patty Wetterling's a decade-old, Pam Poyer and Connie Larson's all too new. The mothers argued that their child's abductors and killers might have been caught had a high-tech dragnet of information been dropped around the crime scene area.
Maybe if we had it in place, I'd have her home this Christmas. But I don't. And the last thing when I talked to Kate on the phone was, "I'll see you tomorrow, Mom. I love you." There was no tomorrow.
Case in point, as volunteers searched for Katie Poyer last May, faxes about her disappearance never made it to some neighboring counties because the agencies had the wrong equipment. As police worked Callie Jo Larson's murder, they discovered that many registered sex offenders had moved or vanished.
Callie's killer, this isn't a one-time deal, you know, and how much time are we going to wait before it happens again?
The fix? Researcher Dale Good says police must share what they know quickly. He envisions fingerprinting terminals in more places, computers that are linked, and rapid-fire communication in the hours after a crime. Enough, he says, of paper files.
Who benefits from this system? The offenders, not the public.
Nor the victims' families. A club, Pam Poyer called it, of mothers still waiting for justice.
I don't want it to be your child. I don't want you to find out the way I found out. We need to do something now. I don't want any of you to be standing up here with us next year pleading for the same thing. Help us.
We haven't been to my sister's in Detroit for 10 years, so we're headed out for the holidays to spend Christmas out there. And we're hoping for a little snow out there as well.
My mom was supposed to be in at 12:35, and I understand the plane's still on the ground. It's almost 1 o'clock here, so I think people are pretty tolerant of weather delays and things like that this time of year.
The terminal so that no one is surprised by the fact that they're on camera if you're here in a public place. So we have good coverage, and this camera is all record on this machine the door number, the time.
What was it? Paper. It's down. So yeah, if you could just tell me again when you got the system and what makes this better.
Back a little bit.
Expect your climb on the go, wing 270
and go with.
You know, the use of smoke detectors has been one of the biggest advances for early detection of fire that there has been.
Okay.
In early December, this Duluth bank was robbed, but not one customer lost a dime. That's because banks and other financial institutions are insured. But if you withdraw your money and it gets stolen, it's next to impossible to recover it through insurance.
If you check your insurance policy, there is no coverage for that. I don't think there are any homeowners policies that will cover that. Whereas in the bank, you do have $100,000 worth of coverage.
Despite this standard procedure, Northland banks fear many customers are planning to withdraw substantial amounts as the year changes. Some customers fear computer crashes will damage or destroy their account records. Experts say that won't happen. But even if it did, they say they have ways around the problem.
Our plan is to create hard copies of everybody's accounts on the 30th and on the 31st, and we will have that information available to us.
Northland financial institutions are secure in their belief they can handle the millennium change because they've had to follow extensive regulations for Y2K preparedness. Their compliance has been checked, rechecked, and tested by the U.S. Treasury Department. Failure to comply could result in penalties and even closure by the Federal Controller of Currency. Still, bankers are hearing that customers plan to make significant year-end withdrawals. That has police concerned.
It wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out to hang around a bank or another savings institution and wait for an individual to take out a large sum of money and then follow that individual to their home.
Many financial institutions are taking steps to increase security the week of the millennium change.
Some of the banks have contacted us and asked about hiring off-duty officers to be on duty at their banks just prior to the 31st of December. They do anticipate that there'll be more than the normal amount of withdrawals, and I think most of the banks and credit unions will have extra money on hand.
Experts stress the safest place for your money is in a bank or credit union. They do recommend, however, that you keep hard copies of your monthly bank statements and financial transactions. At Western National Bank in West Duluth, Barbara Riles, News 6.
Cross-country skiing is one of the best calorie-burning exercises, but Stacy meanwhile remembers those calories came with a price in her first winter of skiing.
Pain. Very sore, and yeah, it was a hard winter.
That was 5 years ago, but for the past 4 years, Stacy has started the cross-country ski season well prepared. Each fall, she takes a conditioning class at the UW Hospital Sports Medical Center, geared specifically for cross-country skiers.
Makes you a lot stronger, and it conditions the muscles so that you go through the initial season soreness here instead of on the slopes.
Weights back on the heels and the midfoot.
Twice a week, instructor Lisa Milbrandt puts the participants through a series of exercises designed to improve balance and work specific muscle groups they'll be using when they hit the snow.
A lot of overuse injuries are due from muscle imbalance and flexibility imbalances, and if we can help get that balanced out in an individual, it's going to decrease their risk of injuries.
The conditioning class begins in September, long before the snow flies, but many of the exercises make it easy for John Riley to visualize a winter workout.
You're simulating a lot of the movements, and you're just mentally playing through the movements, while you're doing them, and you're picturing having poles in your hands, being out on the trail, propelling yourself forward down the trail. I mean, that's a lot of what you're doing with the class.
This year's class is just wrapping up. Participants hope their work will pay off with a more enjoyable season outside on the snow.
Fifth grader Sean Murphy walks the halls of his school without fear. There's a sense of community at Pattison Elementary. It's a desire to keep that sense of peace that made the district take a preemptive strike in the name of security. Identification badges are now mandatory for all school staff and visitors.
I think the more we can do to enhance the feeling of closeness and safety, the more those big ugly pictures from the rest of the world can go away.
Principal Deb Torzeski says the system has actually been in place at her school for a while. She says the badges take the guesswork out of monitoring the halls. Now, students can even help keep an eye out for strangers in the building. But in order for the system to work, Principal Torzeski wants to be certain her students understand the policy.
And what grown-ups are wearing those here?
Like a student, a teacher, the teachers, and like staff and helpers.
That's right.
Another element of security, students can easily see who to turn to in case of an emergency.
Kids can be safe now because they know that if it's a teacher that has a badge on, they know that they can help them.
What do you need?
Where's Grandma Jim?
In our building, it is fairly close-knit. We have a small staff, and we have a lot of people who are well-known by everybody already. But it I think, accentuates that feeling of safety.
In Superior, Jason Rice, News 6.
The familiar honk of support, one thing that's been keeping ME International workers going during their lengthy time on the picket line.
Like, you can hear people honking their horns now all the time. I mean, 2, 3 in the morning, people will be honking their horns as they drive by.
Workers went on strike at the end of the summer, asking for improvements in work conditions, including their overtime policy. Occasional visits from local lawmakers have boosted spirits, as disagreements with the company have stretched over 5 months now. Even as the temperatures have dropped, they say their resolve hasn't faltered. But still, news that both sides are at least back at the bargaining table is encouraging for workers like Russell Ellis.
When I came in today, it was like 20 to 5, and they told me that things were going a lot better. And I felt a lot, like a weight was off my shoulders.
Despite the hardships for many workers and their families,
the solidarity of the members of the local has never been better, and we're committed to what we're doing.
the president of Local 1028 says no specific agreements have been reached yet, but at least both sides are ready to talk for the first time since Thanksgiving.
You're never going to reach agreement if you don't sit down and talk. And we're back at the table, and we have movement to make, and I'm sure they have movement to make.
Company representatives plan to offer a counter-proposal Wednesday, another step in a path that could get workers out of the cold and back on the job. In Duluth, Kim Kaiser, News 6. Nurse practitioners are nurses with advanced training in delivering primary care to patients. Half the states permit them to practice without physician supervision. In all states, nurse practitioners have some authority to prescribe drugs. They often can spend more time on an office visit. Patients like Jackie Mueller appreciate the attention.
A nurse practitioner is more one-on-one. I feel they're more caring and understanding, and they listen better.
Until research results appeared recently in the Journal of the American Medical Association, no study had evaluated the effects of the health status of a similar group of patients cared for by either nurse practitioners or physicians in comparable practice settings.
All of the patients seen by nurse practitioners and physicians did equally well in terms of their outcomes and their satisfaction.
Nurse practitioner Mary Muttinger headed a team that followed more than 1,300 patients, mostly women in their 40s from the Dominican Republic who had no primary care provider. For 6 months, some were assigned to a nurse practitioner.
The patients who were seen by the nurse practitioners or the physicians in this study had the same number of return visits. They were equally likely to be hospitalized. Their length of stay in the hospital was similar. They utilized medications similarly. They utilized specialist referrals similarly.
But an editorial in the same issue of the journal calls for caution when drawing conclusions for the study.
It would be going too far, much too far, to claim that this study puts to rest the issue of whether nurse practitioners can provide as effective health care as primary care physicians.
The editorial by Dr. Harold Cox praises the study as the most ambitious and well-executed comparison of physicians and nurse practitioners to date.
The weaknesses of the study was that it was performed in a very narrow population of women in their mid-40s, and the study only lasted 6 months, which is hardly long enough for many episodes of severe illness to occur and to really provide an adequate test of the nurse practitioner's ability to care for those patients on their own.
Muttinger agrees longer studies that include people of all backgrounds are needed, but she believes this study, added to the dozens that precede it, give a reassuring picture.
What we hope physicians will take away from this study is that nurse practitioners are valued colleagues with whom they should think about joint practices, working together, especially medical specialists who need a very high level of good primary care for their patients. They may want to partner with a nurse practitioner to provide the best specialty care and the best primary care.
For example, we've had to spend less time helping people with depredations problems with bears and geese and deer and so forth. We've had to cut back on the time that we spend talking to school groups and civic groups. We've had to cut back on acquisition of new wildlife management areas. In fact, we're not acquiring any new wildlife areas. We've had to cut back a thing, but nothing has ever come out of it yet. And Lessard has got a plan for
After 3 months on the lam, someone figured out the story behind this face. 32-year-old Kyle Bell had a secret past.
It showed this guy's face, and it just it was like a slap in the face. Hollered at my wife, had her come in here and look. Because, I mean, it just, my chin dropped to the ground.
Rick Wilson works as a maintenance man at this Northeast Dallas apartment building. He never guessed one of his neighbors was a fugitive wanted for murder by the FBI. Wilson may never have known Kyle Bell's story had he not seen it on America's Most Wanted.
It's really shocking. I mean, he had a few things about him that would draw suspicion, but I mean, everybody does, you know, when you're in this type of business. But like I say, you never know.
The FBI says Bell was working temporary jobs in Dallas as a plumber and parking lot attendant. In fact, he was reportedly working concessions here at Reunion Arena at a Mavericks game just hours before he was arrested. Police and the FBI tracked down Bell at his apartment after the maintenance man saw him on TV and called in a tip. The FBI says Bell gave them a fake driver's license and tried to run.
Tried to go out the back window of the apartment. When we first knocked on the door, officers at the back of the apartment dissuaded him from going out the back window.
Bell was living here with a woman and her 5 children who had no idea about his violent past. Last September in North Dakota, Bell was sentenced to life in prison for murdering an 11-year-old girl, Gina North. Then, just 2 months later in October, he managed to escape from a prison transport bus while it was stopped in New Mexico. A massive search started, but no luck.
Unthinkable happens, you know, and the guy escapes, and it's just like the nightmare starts all over again.
Even after Bell's capture, his Dallas neighbors say their nightmare is realizing the story of his past.
It's so hard to believe. That's just way too close to home. It's just way too close.
Rhonda Hughes, NBC News, Dallas.
A jury found Donald Blum guilty last December of possessing firearms as a convicted felon after investigators found 4 guns on his property near Moose Lake. The mandatory minimum sentence for the firearms charge is 15 years, but he could be spending more time in prison. The federal sentencing guidelines for this case recommend that he get somewhere between 15 years 8 months and 19 years 5 months for the crime. A pre-sentence investigation determined the guidelines by considering the seriousness of Blum's prior convictions. Blum's lawyer, Richard Holmstrom, has urged the judge to give him a lighter sentence, while the prosecuting attorneys have filed a motion asking for more time in prison, almost 25 years. The lawyers will argue for a specific sentence in front of Judge Thunheim, and then Blum himself will have a chance to speak as well. This case is separate from the state's charges of murdering and kidnapping 19-year-old Katie Poyer from a Moose Lake gas station last May. The dates for that trial haven't been set. Kim Kaiser, News 6.
Let's see, kids, I'd like to introduce you to Lieutenant Governor Shunk. And this would...
I've learned that there are many wonderful things that are happening in education in Minnesota, but we also have pockets where we need to look at ways that we can help education be better in that community.
This is an exemplary class. Thanks, kids. Bye-bye. And this is their teacher, Diana Christmas. This is Lieutenant Governor Mitchell.
I'm very glad to meet you. I wish I had